I'm Jana, the little sister.
And I'm Jeff, her big brother. Welcome to Sibling Rivalry, a podcast about our favorite sport, baseball.
This week on Sibling Rivalry Baseball, we don our floaties and jump into the deep end.
And this year, I'm finally going off the high dive. And now let's take a look at the SRBB headline.
The minor league baseball season is officially canceled.
2020 All-Star Game canceled. Dodgers are awarded the 2022 All-Star Game.
Garrett Cole and his wife Amy welcome their first child, a baby boy, Yankee fan Cole.
And the MLS is back tournament may not be. It's in jeopardy after 9 Dallas FC players test positive for COVID-19. And that's it for this week's SRBB headlines. Find these and past headlines at siblingrivalrybb.com. And remember to tell your friends. Don't forget to rate and subscribe wherever you listen to our podcast. Summer warm-up is underway. The initial player pool list have been released. So what do you say? Let's take a dip.
The pools can contain up to 60 players, but they weren't required to be a full 60 players. So we saw that with the Baltimore Orioles, who only had 44 players in their pool, which still seems like a lot for a pool. Is it an Olympic-sized pool, kiddie pool?
Well, for the Orioles, it was a kiddie pool.
So that's pretty crowded. If the pool is full and they wish to sign someone, claim a player off waivers, or acquire a player via trade, they'll need to either release, waive, or trade a 60-man player of their own.
I was just thinking, is it fair to the other teams that don't have a pool in their stadium, like the Diamondbacks?
Aren't they the only ones that have a pool? So
well, now
they have
Kansas City has their waterfalls out there, so they could use that. And there is water in Anaheim.
Oh, yeah.
Through the rocks. So anybody that's got water features, I guess that could be a pool, but not like an actual pool.
Right, not like the Diamondbacks. So they'd have a lifeguard, and when someone is either traded or they have to get out of the pool, the lifeguard blows the whistle. It's like, okay, get out, and then somebody jumps right in.
And then what happens is that one of the players didn't want to leave the Diamondbacks, and they pull a squints. And still get kicked out.
And there's no running on the pool deck.
No running around the pool.
The 60-man pool, we know that the pools have been released. They weren't full. Dodgers had 51 on their player pool, but there are no other players are permitted to participate in camp. So you had to be on the list. So as a private pool party. So teams are permitted to operate 2 separate camps if they so choose, and all teams will operate an alternative training site once the season begins. Players on the 40-man roster need not be included in the 60-man player pool, but players need not to be on the 40-man roster unless they're added and they're on the active MLB roster. That sounds really confusing to me, what I just said.
My brain hurt. Thank you.
It does. If a player is removed from a 60-man player pool, he cannot be added back to that team's pool, but he can be added to another team's pool.
Okay, so you're released.
Yes.
You're outright released if you're off the 60-player, out of the 60-player pool.
Yes. Players cannot be freely removed from the 60-man player pool without roster implications. So other than the injured list, suspension, or some other infrequent designation, teams will be forced to surrender control over a player to remove him from the 60-man player pool. Teams may otherwise add already controlled or newly acquired players to their 60-man player pool, which we are seeing, as we'll talk about later. There are some of the guys that were drafted in June are on the player pools for those teams. Players can be signed to the 60-man player pool without being added to the 40-man roster, but that requires 60-man player pool space. Typical minor league deal kind of thing there. The active MLB roster will consist of up to 30 players, at least 25 players at the start of the season, and after 2 weeks of play, the number goes down to 28, and then down to 26. 2 players pretty much each week for the first month. There's the taxi squad. One of those players has to be a catcher. Player must be on the 40-man roster in order to be added to the active MLB roster. And once a player is placed on the active roster, standard rules apply.
All right, I want to get this part straight, because this is one part I guess I didn't get, because I didn't really get deep into all of the different details of this. If there's a 60-player pool, until that player is put onto the 40-man roster, so you're going to have to do a couple of different transactions then, right? And is that how you read this? So the player who's not part of the 40-man roster will need to be moved in. A space has to open on the 40-man for someone from the additional potentially 20 players, and the remaining players in the pool will be added there so that they can then be added to the active roster and become one of the 30, 28, or 26, depending on when it happens. Is that correct?
Yes.
I just made you an expert right there.
Once a player is on the active roster, then all of the standard rules you would see in a normal season apply.
And the other thing that I've picked up, and we could talk more about this later, is that any player, like the minor league players that have been called up, the prospects that are part of the pool, will continue to make their minor league money. They'll be paid throughout the time that they're in the pool at that rate. However, if they're part of the taxi squad, they'll make MLB level per diem.
Yes.
Which is almost as much as they make as a minor leaguer.
Yeah, exactly. The trade deadline is August 31st. Only players in the 60-man player pool may be traded. Any player that is traded must go into an acquiring team's player pool, but it seems that there's nothing to stop teams from adding prospects to the 60-man player pool specifically in order to trade them. The acquiring team would need to be capable of carrying such players in their own 60-man player pool while still fielding a 26-man active roster of capable big leaguers.
I get the point of it is we're not going to play with all these extras. Like during the season, you might trade a couple of players and then add in 3 players to be named later, or I'm going to give you these 3 prospects. It sounds to me like they've really made it complicated enough to kind of avoid too many trades.
I think so. I mean, I guess if you're going to trade somebody to another team, then you would think that the player from the one team, that would open up a spot. But I think it's a little more complicated than that. And so
then if you did trade, unlike in the past, well, we know this season's odd. You're going to have a month rental with this player. But I guess the thing would be, and I'm only going to use this as a quick example. This isn't in any way indicative of what we want to have happen or could happen. I mean, I guess it could happen, but let's say the Dodgers find out from Mookie he has absolutely no intentions of returning to the Dodgers. Then at that point, it would be worth it for them to cut their losses with him and trade him wherever to get something for him instead of losing him outright a month later or 2 months later, because we know the Dodgers are going to go to the playoff.
Right. Yeah, not a scenario that we want to happen. But I did see his glove that he's got, and it's Dodger blue and white. So I think he's here to stay.
Just from his glove
Just from his glove.
Cost him, $100, and he makes $27 million a year.
Yeah, but it's
okay.
A cool
That's a good
glove.
indicator. Yeah,
cautious.
It's not like
optimism.
he went and bought like a $500,000 car and had it painted in Dodger colors.
I don't know. I haven't seen his car.
True, I haven't either. Don't know if that's the case or not. But it does make it. I guess that's going to be the one thing. A trade's really got to make a lot of sense. I wonder too, it will make those teams at the bottom, because I saw the other day that a lot of teams that at the beginning of what was the regular season, 162 games, the Angels, let's say, their chances to go and win the World Series were like 15%. In the 60 game, it jumped up to like almost 35%. So a lot of teams are going to see better, and we've talked about this in the past, and I know it's circulating out there a lot with baseball reporting outlets that in a short season like that, who knows what could happen. Any team could come out hot and play those first 60 games. And just like any great team, you could see a team that's stacked like the Yankees or the Dodgers stumble out of the gate for some reason. Or remember 2017, the Dodgers went through that stretch, and while it wasn't 60 games, they played terribly. And if you start off like that, who knows? Maybe when we get to August 31st, a team that normally you would have counted out might be fully in it and looking to make a deal with somebody who's willing to give up somebody they know they're going to lose.
Yeah, it would be interesting to see, especially if you looked at, we've talked about free agency and who the free agents are going to be for next year coming up. It could be interesting to see if that was the case, that they know that they're going to be a free agent, so they just go ahead and trade them, and the team that's doing really well gets the rental, and it could help them, or I don't know, say hurt them, depending on the player.
I think for a lot of teams, they almost should just stay static with their bigger names. Even if you win it, I guess if I'm a team that never wins anything, if I'm a team that's never been to the World Series, let's say the Seattle Mariners have never been to the World Series, they go all in, at least they can say we went to a World Series, even if it wasn't a funky season. That could be worth that push, and there's definitely more money there. I wonder, though, if a lot of teams aren't going to take those chances based off of this. And as I told you the other day, I think for any team, and I said specifically for the Dodgers, but any team that has a player that's on, they're in their contract year, I would be poking and prodding them subliminal messages, opt out, opt out.
Yeah.
I think we should be sending Mookie messages to opt out, because if he decides to opt out, he doesn't fit, as far as we know, he doesn't fit under any of the categories of high risk or high risk family that we've heard of.
Right.
So if he opts out just simply because he doesn't want to deal with it, or he doesn't want to play, or some players even said, I don't know if I want to play without. Nick Markakis opted out for family health reasons, but he also said there's just too much weirdness about playing without fans. If Mookie opts out on his own with no reasoning, he doesn't get service time, which means he's not a free agent until next year.
It's time for Dodger baseball.
All right, as I continue to build up my nerve to go off the high dive, take those deep breaths to do that, let's talk some Dodgers and what their 60 player pool, or what is it, 51, 52 at this point, player pool looks like.
So Los Angeles Dodgers president of baseball operations, Andrew Friedman, said the club would not immediately fill all 60 available slots. He said, our thought process in putting together the 60-man is trying to balance whether or not this might be the only reps some of our prospects get this year. There's just lots that's up in the air. So when the Dodgers announced their player pool, there were 51. It included all members of the 40-man roster and some of the organization's top prospects. Also, the Dodgers just recently signed A.J. Ramos, who is a relief pitcher, to a minor league deal, and he is now on the 60-man roster. So I think it's 50, it might be 53, because there was another player added. So they have it broken up into right-handed pitchers. You have your usual suspects, Pedro Baez, Walker Buehler, Dylan Floro, Tony Gonsolin, Gratterall. I never can say his first name, so I'm just going to call him. Yeah. I like to call him Buster.
Well, there you go. Just call him Buster Gratterall.
Yeah. Kenley Jansen, who, by the way, hasn't shown up to camp yet, so not sure about that. Joe Kelly, Dustin May, Dennis Santana, you've heard his name before, Ross Stripling, Blake Trinan. Then you've got guys, about 3 of them that last year played for the Quakes. Michael Grove, Andre Jackson, Marshall Kasowski, who played for Tulsa, and he had a 2.45 ERA last year when he played with Tulsa.
Wait,
so,
is that the guy who was in the little one-eyed guy in Monsters, Inc.? Oh, no, that's Mike Kozlowski.
Yeah.
Okay, never mind.
Another one to watch. This guy played with the Oklahoma City Dodgers. I almost called them the 89ers. That's really going back. Mitchell White.
I still have an 89ers hat.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, that mom and dad sent me years ago.
Yes. I like that name, the 89ers. That made sense. I like the
more than the Oklahoma City Dodgers. See, that's the one thing that I've never been a fan of is when minor league teams are named after. I think the one that made sense to me, like Vero Beach Dodgers, that made sense to me because they played at Dodger Town. That one I got, but it's like to the Twins, any of the Twins teams, minor league teams. Why would they be the Twins unless they live in a city they play in a city with a lot of twins per capita, or they, in some place where like South Carolina, Greenville and Spartanburg are kind of right there close. They could be kind of Twin Cities. That I would get. It doesn't make any sense. Come up with a fun name.
Yeah, like the Iowa Cubs. I never
right. I mean, I know they're
really
close,
got that.
But why be the Iowa Cubs? How boring is that?
Yeah. I like the 89ers. Of course, the 89ers went from 89ers, then they went to the Redbirds. Nobody was really a fan of that. And then, of course, the Dodgers bought that club. So,
right.
So those
it's the Dodgers' fault that they're named the Dodgers because the Dodgers have no creativity going on there.
No.
To name, I mean, obviously, you don't want to call them the Oklahoma City Sooners, even though that matches up with that, because really just down the road a little bit from where the Brickyard, that's the name of their stadium, right? Is Norman, home of the University of Oklahoma Sooners. But they could have been called, maybe they could have called them the Boomers.
Oh, that'd be perfect. Sooner.
What's a synonym for Sooner? I know there's not one probably in a thesaurus, but a synonym for Sooner, the Oklahoma City Land Cheaters.
Oklahoma City Rush. No, I don't.
Rush? Well, that would be better. The Sneakies.
Hey, some of our relatives were, I don't know that they were sneaky.
They were outlaws is what they were.
Yes, they came across the border. All right, so left-handed pitchers, the only one on the list that stands out as far as a name that I don't know is Victor Gonzalez, who also played with Oklahoma City. Now on this same list is David Price, and David Price has opted out for the season, so that left that spot open for, as I mentioned, AJ Ramos, who he is a relief pitcher, but there's a possibility he could fill in a spot there in the bullpen. Looking at the pitchers with the 60-man pool, now that David Price is out, who's going to take that spot? And my vote is Ross Stripling.
What was the projected rotation was Walker Buehler, Clayton Kershaw, David Price, Julio Urias was slotted at 4, right? And Alex Wood was slotted at 5.
Yes.
Does that sound right?
I think that sounds right.
So now the question is, do they all move up one? And Stripling or Gonsolin or May, or do they go out and get somebody else that maybe he's sitting out there unsigned?
It's possible, but I really think that Ross Stripling is the pitcher that deserves. I mean, he's put in his time and he's been a starting pitcher. He's come out of the bullpen for the Dodgers, and we know he's a good starting pitcher. He has that ability. So to me, it's a no-brainer to slot him in. Now, where
So
he
does
would
he
be
slot in at 3?
I don't think he would slot in at 3. I think you've got, so definitely, Kershaw and Bueller, 1, 2, and then
Honestly, I think
Alex
he's a good
Wood.
spot in there because he's a righty. And right now, when David Price is in there, Walker Buehler's the only righty. So it helps balance out that starting staff a little bit. But I mean, Tony Gonsolin's a righty. Dustin May's a righty. So those guys could slide in there as well. I agree that Ross Stripling has done a lot of stuff, but just because he's been there, does that necessarily mean he may have done the work and he could be there? But do you say, well, you've earned your spot, so we're going to go ahead and use you there? Or do you look at it and go, Ross, what's best for the team is that you're available in both?
Well, it could come out that way. Starter. I mean, he did come out recently, just within the last couple of days on Twitter, and he, said that he was disappointed that he wasn't in that starting rotation.
Well, we talked about that a few episodes ago too, that he was upset about that, and had he gone to the Angels, had that trade gone through, he definitely would have been a starter with the Angels.
Yes. With the Dodgers mentality and the way the Dave Roberts and Andrew Friedman, how they are, the players know we're going to use you where we need you, and this is for the good of the team. So even if with Ross Stripling was upset or felt slighted, I think he's still a team player.
Well, and that's the key, coming out and talking about it and saying, well, I'm upset that I didn't get to be a starter. So it depends on how he said it. If he comes out on his podcast and he goes, yeah, I'm disappointed. I really wanted to do that, but I love being a Dodger. Otherwise he can do himself more harm than good.
Now, in a LA Times story by Jack Harris, Ross Stripling is quoted as saying, I can go both ways. I can start, relieve. I can get you 1 out in the 8th, or I can go 4 innings and long relief to bridge a short start to the back end of the bullpen. I'm totally fine with that.
That's what you want to hear from a guy like that, and with the team.
Exactly.
The Dodgers, the one thing that's made the Dodgers, in my opinion, one of the most successful teams over the last few years is that they don't have one position players, and they don't have, like with the pitching staff with stuff like that. Ross Stripling is a good and has been a good example of a pitcher that they can use as a spot starter when they needed to. He can pitch long relief. He can pitch short relief. Just as he said in that quote, he's willing to do those things. And those are the types of players that Andrew Friedman has been good about trying to pick up. Guys who have versatility. When you have Chris Taylor, Kike Hernandez, even Jock Peterson, who's probably slated to be a starter this year in left field, those types of players that you can put in different positions and not have to worry about. Even Max Muncy, you can play, he's generally playing first base, but he can move to second. And he's played third in the past when he's needed to. And with Gavin Lux coming up, if he plays to potential, then you can also, slide people around in there, move Gavin to short, Corey to third if you need to give JT a day off. There's a lot of pieces that you can rotate into different spots and not really miss, other than Jock playing first, not miss.
Which should not happen ever again.
Right. No, that was a major league. I think they should have gone ahead and put him in the bullpen with Russell Martin. Maybe he would have come out better out there than he did at first base.
Probably so. I think the comments from Ross Stripling, the quote that I just read, is more indicative of how he feels now. I think in mid-March, or when spring training was going on, he was feeling some of that slight because he didn't get it. He felt that he didn't get a chance to earn a spot in the rotation, but that's changed with David Price
through attrition.
Yeah, and like I said, Kenley Jansen has heart issues. He has not shown up yet to the summer warm up, so there's a possibility he may opt out. We haven't heard, and I guess in the coming days we may. So that's another spot. And when you're talking about catchers, Austin Barnes and Will Smith, according to Dave Roberts, they're going to be taking on the catching duties. They're going to share. Now, one name that's on here is Rocky Gale, and we've heard Rocky Gale's name, and he's been around for a while. And I looked, and I noticed in 2006, he was drafted by the Kansas City Royals in the 49th round, but he didn't sign. And then in 2010, he was drafted by the Padres in the 24th round, and he did sign. And then in 2015, he was granted free agency. And when he was granted free agency, like 6 days later, he signed as a free agent with the Padres. And then in 2018, he was released by the Padres. And then in 2018, he signed as a free agent with the Dodgers. And then last year, he was purchased by the Tampa Bay Rays from the Dodgers. And then in November of last year, he was granted free agency. And then at the end of November, he signed as a free agent with the Dodgers. So he's been around a while.
Well, he's like a 10-year, like I said, was it last episode or 2 episodes ago? He's kind of like the Crash Davis in the sense that Crash Davis was never really in the bigs. I think he spent 21 days in the bigs one time in the show. Well, Rocky Gale's about 10 years in the minor leagues overall. He's solid enough that teams want to take a chance with him, but he's not been good enough to make a roster full time.
He's in the pool. And the reason I brought up when he was drafted and then he was traded, he was granted free agency and all that was because once I've seen his name, I knew he played for the Dodgers. I've seen him play with the Dodgers at the major league level for a few games here and there, but I didn't realize all of the steps, where he's been, what his travel log looked like.
I was looking at the Dodgers catchers, Keibert Ruiz, who we found out tested positive. So that's the one thing. There have been some players who have tested positive throughout Major League Baseball of the names that we know. We were wondering, once they're through the protocol, once they quarantined and they're testing negative, and I think they have to have 2 negative tests in a row is what the deal was. Will they come back? Will they opt out? We don't know. So we don't know what's going on. We know Keibert Ruiz, who is a top prospect. In fact, there was a long time that they felt that Keibert Ruiz was probably going to come up before Will Smith because he was more solid across the board. Will Smith made the most of his time. I feel like Rocky Gale will probably be the taxi squad catcher because they know what he can do. He's a veteran guy. Even if he's not played a lot up there, he knows how to play the position. And the taxi squad catcher isn't just going to hang out in a room waiting to be used. That catcher can be used as the bullpen catcher.
Yes.
So he can be in there. He's the one out of the 3-man taxi squad that can actually be there and be part of things day to day, which makes him more valuable. The catcher spot is probably the most valuable spot as far as the taxi squad goes.
I agree with that.
So I think that, I would do that. I don't know. Obviously I knew Austin. I knew Cuz. We never talked about that.
We didn't.
No, we talked about Jocelyn, but we never talked about Austin Barnes.
We should do an aside. So Austin Barnes, we call Cuz because he does share our last name. And he does have a family resemblance, believe it or not.
He does. There is a resemblance.
And so I need to do some family history and see how
somehow there's a connection.
Somehow he's related. So we just call him Cuz because we're pretty sure that he's part of our family.
And even if he's not, we share a last name. So anytime that you share a last name with somebody, you're all related.
That's it. Yep.
Unless you don't want to be.
Yeah.
Now,
Well,
the
that
one
happens
guy,
too.
and maybe you can expound upon this, and I know the one thing that I've figured out from looking across the board at all of these player pools is that the most important part of it is not the usual suspects, not the people that we expect to see playing. The Dodger players that are on here, Mookie Betts, Cody Bellinger, Max Muncy, Matt Beatty. I want to throw him in there.
Mm-hmm.
Justin Turner, Corey Seager, all those guys we expected to be, because that's a starting lineup people or first off the bench in some cases. The guys who are probably the most important and the reason why spots were left open, important guys are these prospects that are at the top of the team's list of prospects. The ones they want to make sure get work in. Since the minor league season's been canceled, there's no place for these guys to work out except on their own. They wanted to make sure that they're in a little more of a coordinated surroundings for their training and for development. And so Diego Cartaya is one that, honestly, of the prospects in the Dodger system, not one that I was familiar with.
He's not one I'm familiar with either, because he played last year. He played in the Dominican League and he played in the Arizona League. So he doesn't have any really minor.
So this would have been his first full season minor league.
In the minor leagues, yes.
He played Arizona Fall League?
Yes.
Okay.
And then in the Dominican. So,
but they must see something in him.
There's something there, but there's not enough, I guess, stats to really see. But he did well enough in those two leagues that he played in that there must be something.
So I think that's going to be the bigger thing. And as time goes, we've only seen David Price officially opt out so far. Last word I heard, AJ Pollock hasn't shown up yet. And we know that he just had, like his wife just had a baby or babies. I don't remember what his situation was.
They had a baby girl and she was born premature. So she had been in the NICU. And I don't know if she's still in the NICU. I think she may be home now, but she's still vulnerable. I'm not sure exactly if she was just born premature and what other issues. That would be someone that I wouldn't expect to come to summer warm-up.
I don't see in this Dodger lineup a lot of players that necessarily would opt out based on what we know. Although Kike could be somebody because he just announced his wife was pregnant. And I know they're early on, but he still doesn't want her getting sick with this.
Right.
So there are some things, and that seems to be the one thing. All the players who have expectant parents or have newborns or kids with issues all seem to be the ones on the fence. And there seems to be a fair amount of players who are expecting children this summer.
There are, yeah.
But I don't really see, from the Dodgers standpoint, just looking at the basics, I don't see a lot of these players in a position to say, I'm opting out for a reason other than I just don't want to take the chance. A lot of these guys, I don't see like Cody Bellinger. Cody Bellinger's young and probably feels invincible. Whether Max Muncy, Justin Turner, no kids, not sure what their stance is on those things, but we don't see anything from there. So those are the people that, it doesn't really feel like there's any player here that's ready to jump out and opt out of this. And if I'm a minor league player, a prospect who's been given this opportunity, I'm sure I'm not jumping out because I don't want to miss out on a chance to play. No. I think we'll see a lot of that across the board as we start seeing. David Price is one of the bigger names to opt out. Nick Markakis, not a huge name, but a bigger name, opted out. Freddie Freeman, we don't know if he's going to opt out or not, but he has it. There's a lot of names. As we get bigger and bigger names, the only one player that I know of for sure that I wouldn't be surprised other than Kenley Jansen, would be Clayton Kershaw, because he's a real family guy too. You know, how many of these players have kids that we've never heard of or don't know? But almost everybody, even if you're not a Dodger fan, has heard of Charlie Kershaw, has seen a picture of him
Yes.
out doing his dad's windup.
Yes.
So
Future
we
major
know.
leaguer.
Yep. So I don't see a lot of players on the Dodgers necessarily opting out, but I do see, as time goes and we're hearing that there's problems with the testing, you're going to see Luke Raley in the outfield because somebody opted out, or you're going to see Omar Estevez.
Yeah.
And you don't know what, and for whatever reason, but we're going to see, I think some teams more than others, we're really going to see a AAA season for some teams, especially.
Well, in the outfield for the Dodgers, you have DJ Peters, and DJ Peters is a name that you hear he played for Oklahoma City, and he's one that's always been kind of on that verge of coming into the. You think he'd be there already, but because of the way the Dodgers are stacked, he doesn't have that spot. So with AJ Pollock, who hasn't shown up yet, Dave Roberts said he was going to platoon with Jocelyn in left field. But if he's not there,
Jocelyn can't hit lefties, so you have to platoon him.
So, but that could open up for one of these other guys like Luke Raley, who, interestingly enough, was traded by the Dodgers in 2018 for Logan Forsythe and Brian Dozier. We know how that ended up. Well, he was traded by the Dodgers, with Logan Forsythe for Brian Dozier. And then he was traded by the Twins back to the Dodgers when Buster Gratterall, Buster, was when they did the trade with Kenta Maeda. I really do need to learn how to say his name because I don't know. I know, you know what? I got Jocelyn, I got Cuz, I got Buster. We got Petey.
Petey.
Mm-hmm. Now, for the DH, Dave Roberts said that Matt Beatty, Max Muncy, Justin Turner, and Jock Peterson would be rotating DHs. So if they get that break from playing defense, they would be the DH on a rotating basis. And Gavin Lux will play second against right-handed pitchers. Max Muncy is slated to be at first base, but when Gavin Lux isn't playing, then Max will move to second. At least that's the plan right now. But you do have Edwin Rios, who can play first, can play third. And I think if Justin Turner is a DH, then we would see Rios at third, possibly.
Right, yeah, because those guys are going to need a day here and a day there in a sprint like this. Normally, the baseball season's a marathon. This is a sprint, 60 games in 66 days. If all goes well, there should be no doubleheaders. There should be no reschedule. There should be no playing on an off day. But we don't know how all that's going to play out and how weather's going to go. And at this point, we still don't even know if there'll really be a season.
We really don't. And I think we've said this before, we talked about last week, until we see that first pitch, which at this point is reportedly to be between the Yankees and the Nationals for that primetime game on July 23rd.
And then we have heard Dodgers-Giants.
Yes.
Which I've seen a lot of questions about that. Why not Dodgers-Astros? Think about it. Rob Manfred downplayed the whole thing about the Astros' actions. Why would he want to amplify that by putting them on prime time to start the season?
Yeah. And Dodgers-Giants, even though it's Dodgers-Giants, but that is a tradition. Dodgers-Giants.
That's a huge rivalry. Day. That's one of the biggest rivalries in sports. Two teams.
Probably one of the longest.
Well, absolutely, because they both played in New York together. Brooklyn New York. And when the Dodgers moved out here, they talked the Giants into moving too because they needed to have an opponent.
Yes.
It wasn't like they came out here and said, "Oh, well, the Pacific Coast League Angels are right there in Los Angeles when we move there. Let's play them. We'll get them into the league, and then we'll have somebody to beat up."
Yeah. Exactly. Yeah. So the Giants Dodgers for opening day, that's a tradition. And it wasn't a surprise to me when they said the Dodgers. I know a lot of people wanted the Astros, but yeah, you're exactly right. MLB is not going to put the Astros into that position to showcase their lack of punishment that they were given.
Yeah, they're not going because by putting them in there, they then admit there was something there. When they really want to say there's no there.
Yeah.
And what I'm looking forward to is that this isn't going to be different for the Dodgers and the Angels. They play every year regardless of what the rotation is in interleague play.
That's true.
What I want to see though is the Angels are riding a 4-game winning streak in the series. Will they win the next 4?
One thing about the Dodger player pool is just recently they added a second baseman. His name is Devin Mann, and he spent all of last season in my favorite place to say, Rancho Cucamonga. And he was among one of the 7 Quakes that went to the California League All-Star game. With him coming on into the pool, I don't know that he necessarily will play, but he is a player that the Dodgers see real potential in, and he will get the workout. He will get to be able to be active. He'll be able to possibly make an MLB debut, but really at this point, it's about that player development. So Devin Mann is one that fits into that, and he just was added just within the last couple of days.
Moving on from the Dodgers, who we don't necessarily know how many players may opt out, if any do, besides who is already. We move on to the Angels, where one player is certainly on the fence about whether he's going to play this season or not. And we look at a team that was in flux to start the beginning of the season anyway. This is a new era for them, the Joe Madden era. And we look at their 60-player pool. I've climbed to the top of the high dive. Let's see if I actually have the guts to make that leap. So when we start out with what the Angels have done, they very much like the Dodgers have the usual suspects in camp. Mike Trout, Albert Pujols, Justin Upton, the newly acquired Anthony Rendon, along with some of the other pieces, pitchers like Dylan Bundy, Matt Andres. They're there. Shohei Ohtani is back. One of the things that we can look at for this delayed start has been very helpful for the Angels. Shohei Ohtani is now going to be able to pitch as he would normally pitch, which is once a week, and still bat. And then Griffin Canning, who they weren't sure could have been in a position to go need surgery, through the injections he had, says he feels better than he did in spring. So those are positive things. The Angels, too, have added on their player pool. They didn't fill up their 60 either, but they did add in some of the top prospects, Joe Adell being number 1 on the list, Brandon Marsh, another one that's in the outfield. And should Mike Trout opt out, as it feels like he's going to, Joe Adell may very well get to make his major league debut, and probably in his natural position of center field. Brandon Marsh is another one that could get in there as well. The question will be, like with everybody else, how many people may opt out? And I've told you this over the last couple of weeks. All it's going to take is for one of the superstars of the game to opt out, and the dominoes will fall. Nick Markakis opting out, Felix Hernandez opting out, even David Price opting out. They're all names we know as some of the better players in the league right now. But Mike Trout opting out, Bryce Harper opting out, Aaron Judge opting out. Those would be names that would cause. Garrett Cole would be another one that I could add to that list of bigger names. Justin Verlander. You start looking at these guys, they're going to say, wait a minute, if those guys aren't comfortable, I don't know if I am either. And then we're going to start looking, everybody's going to start looking like the AAA version. Will they be the Anaheim or the Los Angeles Angels, or will they be the Salt Lake City Bees when they take the field? Because there'll be more of those. Plus, with those open slots, are they going to bring in more prospects, or are they going to try to sign some of the undrafted free agents, or all these players that are sitting out there that have experience? Will they look to try to bring in some of those guys, some of those veteran guys, to fill in the gaps? Joe Maddon's a guy that a lot of players want to play for. He's got a lot of good ideas. He wants them to play, but he also has said recently, if you can't follow the protocol that's laid out here, because that's a lot of the issues that like Mike Trout and other players have, is that these younger guys are going to want to go out when they're on the road or even at home, and they're going to put themselves in a bad position, get the virus, and then bring it into the clubhouse.
I wanted to read Joe Maddon's quote about addressing that. He said, every organization really needs to tighten up their bubble, and that's what we're trying to do. We're asking you to be the best version of yourself and be the best teammate you've ever been in your life. We need you to follow the protocols and for you to be the best teammate ever. And if you don't want to follow the safety and health protocols, Maddon said you should opt out. Everybody's talking about high risk and those kind of individuals opting out. To me, the person that should opt out is the person who does not want to follow the protocols to a T at any age, at any risk. That hasn't been promoted enough. If you, in heart of hearts, don't believe you could do all of this stuff the way we need you to do all of this stuff, you're the person who should opt out. And I wanted to read the full quote because his quote's been taken, bits and pieces have been taken out. And so I wanted to read the full thing so we could really see that where Joe Maddon's coming from is exactly right. I think that it speaks to what you were talking about before, that if you're going to play baseball, especially this season, you've got to be committed not only on the field, but to wearing a mask and, taking care of yourself and taking care of your teammates.
Yeah, absolutely. That's going to be the biggest part of this is you really understand what it's like to be a member of a team. The Angels have been working by doing things. We saw a thing the other day, you pointed out to me, of the Red Sox using their suites as like extended player lockers and stuff. The Angels are doing the same thing. They have adapted some of those. They'll still get dressed and do a lot of the things in the locker room, but a lot of the couches and the chairs that are always in the locker room that you see, they're doing the luxury suites that way so that they have a place to go and hang out when they're not playing, to rest and relax, so that they can still have a couch or a chair to sit in.
But be isolated or be within that social distancing.
Right.
Yeah, the Boston Red Sox, the one I saw was Alex Verdugo, former Dodger. They were showing his suite. It didn't say who he was sharing with, but it was quite the nice setup. One thing I would say about the Angels pool, I noticed, is there are a lot of guys who last year played for different teams and were either traded to the Angels, like Kyle Keller played for Miami and he was traded to the Angels in January, or Parker Markle, who played for the Pirates and the Mariners and was purchased by the Angels from Pittsburgh. Some free agents, quite a few free agents, especially when you look at pitchers. I think there's 1, 2, 3. I think maybe there's 3, maybe 4 that were free agents that were picked up. But pitching, we've talked about this in the past with the Angels. Pitching is really important because they really need to get a solid starting rotation. So this would be an opportunity for those guys because they've got a lot of pitchers, especially right-handed pitchers.
Joe Madden was early on, before the pools were released, said we're going to probably be at least half pitchers. The Angels have some similarity to their day-to-day players that the Dodgers have, in that they have 2 or 3 players that are versatile, that are utility guys. David Fletcher comes to mind, number 1. He is a guy who can play just about anywhere. He played third base, he played shortstop, he played second, he played the outfield last year. And that's another, when you go back to the pitchers real quick, we had so many issues with injuries last year and other disasters and other tragedies last year, that there were a lot of pitchers who weren't ready to come up and pitch at the level they needed to pitch. So with that, having a lot of pitchers, having the opportunity to either help develop a lot of these guys, or in fact, another one of our cousins who's not on the 40-man roster, who's a pool invitee, Jacob Barnes.
Yes, I did notice that. He's
a righty who will get a chance, who they want to see develop and they want to work with. As we talked about with others, Joe Adell. Catcher-wise, Jose Briceño, he's in the pool. He's been up with the club when they had issues last year. We had a rotating door there at catcher. He came in and played some spots to help bridge the gaps. Anthony Bemboom, who's a catcher there, I believe will probably be the taxi squad catcher because he has the most experience. He played quite a bit last season, with Jason Castro being the starter, Max Stassi being the backup there. Pitchers wise, as far as we know, Andrew Haney's still our opening day pitcher.
What about Reed Detmers? He was
our number one
pick,
10th overall, and he was signed. He was signed before the player pools came out, and then a couple of days after the pool came out, he was then added to the list to be number 56 on the pool. We had 55 to start with the Angels.
Now, do you think that he could possibly find us starting?
I think it'll depend on what's happening in Long Beach, because he's not going to be in Angel Stadium, I don't think, unless they're doing an intra-squad game. He's going to be, I think all of these players, I think Joe Adell, Brandon Marsh, Jose Briceño, Jacob Barnes, all of those guys are going to be over in Long Beach at the secondary site. They're going to be just developing. And Reed Detmers would be one of those guys. Although, as we mentioned, Al Leiter was, as soon as he was done, said he'll be here next year.
Yes.
He may very well be in a position. Keith Law of The Athletic had him as the most advanced pitcher in the draft. So it was a good pick for the Angels. I think they'll watch him to see how he looks. And if need be, they'll bring him up and play him. I know that Joe Madden has said he's going to be fairly quick with the hook this year with his starters, which I get because every game's going to mean something, I guess, until they don't. But at the beginning, he wants to do that because he's going to have, especially in that first 2 weeks, don't overwork anybody in the first 2 weeks, because you can carry 4 more pitchers and then 2 more and then worry about, when you get to the 26-man roster, how you're going to work it out. I think he could very well. I think a lot of these guys are going to see time this season, especially as we see the opt-out, which that's one part that I'm not crazy about how MLB has handled this. I was watching that the NHL has put together everything, and they're playing in bubbles as well, like the NBA, but they're doing their bubbles in Canada. Eastern teams are going to play in Toronto. Western teams are playing in Edmonton. So that's it. That gives it a little different feel too, not having every team there. But they had a opt-out date so that the team knows it's not really fair to any team the farther they get into summer warm-up, that a player, especially a player like Mike Trout, decides to opt out a week before games start, while every player should be playing and be up to speed, it still changes things, and I think that it would be better if they put an opt-out date on things, so that way not only they know, but because for the teams, for the general managers, for the managers, they need to look at it and know we're not going to have Mike Trout this season. And that's the other thing. If Mike Trout, and here's where I'm going to have it take issue with him. I don't care if he opts out. I think he's got to do what's right for his family and for himself. That being said, if he waits and starts playing, let's say the Angels are one of those teams that get out to a hot start, and then 2 weeks into the season, he leaves for the birth of his child and then doesn't come back, I think he's handicapped his team. Where if they know going in to start the season, he's not going to be there. Just like cool for David Price saying early on, I'm opting out. Now we can move Ross Stripling or move whomever in to work up and to build up to starter numbers.
I agree. MLB needed to have a set time. By this day, you need to tell your team whether you're playing or not. So as a player, take a sabbatical for the season, for the 2020 season, and then come back. But I totally agree with you. I think it does handicap your team, because when you are a player like Mike Trout, you're expected to be in center field. You're expected to be hitting those home runs. And that's what your team's expecting. That's what your fans are expecting. And you really just need to rip the Band-Aid off and make the decision.
Absolutely. That's the key. A lot of people have come out when these questions have come up about these players, even Mike Trout. They're selfish. They're this. When David Price opted out, there were a lot of people, and a lot of people came to his defense. And I think they would come to a lot of, these players, when they opt out, are not just opting out and getting paid and they just decided not to play. When they opt out, unless their team decides to pay them, unless there's a reason for them to opt out that has been clearly stated, for them to get their service time, to get paid, they will get neither. Now, I know we've talked about this whole argument about money. Everything that was going on was about money until we got here. Even though they said health and safety protocol was top of their list, there was money, and then way down was, and this is like, so if you did a list, there's money, and then there's just dollar signs for a lot of lines, and then then there was nothing. Then there was health and safety. And now we're starting to see that. But these guys, and I get it, and the reason I brought that up was these guys may have enough money that it doesn't matter. We know Mike Trout doesn't need the paycheck. We know David Price didn't need the paycheck. Kenley Jansen, if he doesn't show up. They don't need the paychecks. There's players that, like Julio Teheran, still hasn't shown up for the Angels. We were talking about Kenley and A.J. Pollock for the Dodgers. Julio Teheran. Now, when asked, Joe Madden said, I can't say anything. So that implies, and that's the other thing that's going to be, because if somebody gets hurt during the season, they got a hamstring problem, that's just going to come out. But you can't talk about whether they tested positive.
Yeah, unless they
that's like
release their names.
Remember back, you hear the stories. We didn't grow up in this time, but you hear the stories. Bruce Hornsby even did a song about it called The Long Valley Road, where they went, something happened, and the daughter got shipped off to her sister's house. Now, it was never said, just implied, but everybody knew why she was gone to her sister's. Somebody said she's gone to her sister's. Everybody knew what they were talking about. That's what's going to happen here.
Mm-hmm.
These players, if they test positive or there's an issue with it and they're not there, it's not going to be oh, they're just on the 10-day disabled list or the 15-day disabled list or whatever. I guess it's just going to be 10 days this season. So we're going to have all that speculation. We're all going to know that must be why. And so all those things, I think that once again, they need an opt-out date. And these players who haven't shown up yet, unless there's a reason that they specifically can't show up, maybe there's players. I think there was one that I heard that they weren't sure when he was going to make it. And I'm trying to remember who it was now, but they weren't sure when he'd make it because he was coming from overseas.
Yeah, that's a different case altogether with travel.
That was a conversation about Julio Teheran as well, is they didn't know if he had relocated to Anaheim in the off season or during this time, or if he's someplace else. So there could be those issues as well. But I think if it was, because in the past when players have had visa issues and couldn't get back into the country, that was put out there. It wasn't silent. So now this year, they either got to be quiet about everything, or the players just have to sign releases saying whatever happens, happens. And if we get it, you can report it.
Yeah, because at this point, it's if the player allows his name to be released, then we know. But like you said, we can all guess. Yeah, he's probably not there because
everybody knowed what they was talking about. So like every other team, the Angels, as constituted, aren't a bad-looking team. Pitching obviously has to come up. Locally here, they played a lot of the 2002 playoffs, and obviously with good reason, the Angels won the World Series that year. And like anybody, any team, you hold on to that and you ride with it. Just like Dodger fans hold on to that 88 World Series like it happened yesterday. And I get it was a good series. But when you look at some of these teams, the Angels were lucky that they had a lot of players that were rookies or young players that all came up and decided to have the best years of their career or started out to that point in their career. And that's what we need from the pitchers. We need the young pitchers to be there. The starting lineup for the Angels is pretty much what it has been, with the exception of adding in Anthony Rendon, Jason Castro. And I just learned the other day, thanks to MLB.com, because I give them credit for their stories. And I did notice that episode 9, the listens are up a little bit from what they were. So maybe people went to go listen to see what that was all about. But I haven't heard anything back from Slangs on Sports.
No, not yet. She's laying low.
Well, what I found out was Andrelton Simmons has never been to an All-Star game. Has never been selected for an All-Star game. He may have been there, but he was in the crowd like everybody else.
That's amazing to me. He's one of the best shortstops in the game.
But I think the problem is he was not always one of the top hitters. And that was starting to change until he got injured.
Right.
But I think that's part of it. And playing in Atlanta, a lot of people didn't know about him. And then what did he do? He went from Atlanta to Anaheim. He probably would have had more exposure in Atlanta as he got better. But yeah, he should definitely have been an all-star at some point. The Angels are in the same position like with the Dodgers, except that the Dodgers are right there ready to continue on their winning ways. And they only got better adding Mookie Betts and David Price. And it doesn't matter if David Price doesn't pitch this year. In fact, I still believe that a lot of these players, the older guys, the guys who have had, especially with pitchers, who have had arm issues, shoulder issues, are going to be better for having a year off from the workloads that they normally carry, that they'll be able to rehab their arms better and be ready to be stronger coming out next season.
Yeah, with David Price, he's not in the same situation as Mookie Betts with free agency.
Right.
So we will see David Price in a Dodger uniform next season. And hopefully Mookie too.
That would be nice. If not, Mookie, we can always use you in Anaheim. And then one of the big, I think, like I said, the biggest deal out of all of this is we're going to see Shohei Ohtani, hopefully for a whole season, strong, able to do. He has said, I want to make an impact on both sides of the ball. If you've seen him since he came back from the off season, he's muscled up. He is a player who's shown us just a little bit of what he can do. And honestly, I think if he lives up to his full potential, if Mike Trout has a full year like he was having last year, he'll hit over 50 home runs in a full season. We're going to see these guys blossom in, and we're going to see the Angels in the playoffs.
I think so too. I mean, when I looked over the pool, they really do have they have a good team. It's a decent team. So we will see. Will they, when they play the Dodgers, will they continue their winning ways? Looking at the Dodgers and Angel pools, I think we both feel comfortable, but there are also notable additions to pools across the league. One is former Dodger Matt Kemp has found space in the Rockies pool. He signed a minor league contract with them. He was not on the Marlins 60-man player pool. They cut him loose and let him, I'd say they let him, it enabled him to be able to sign with the Rockies. So I can see Matt Kemp being a good addition to the Rockies, especially in the DH capacity.
I've seen that a lot, and he's a good example of what we could start seeing, and we alluded to earlier, in that there'll be a lot of players once these pools and the rosters take shape. Once we see the opt-outs, if there are any, we'll start seeing players added in. Like we were talking about. Yeah, he's one that I'm surprised hasn't been picked up somewhere. The other one that talked about a few times, and I think even Clayton Kershaw, Justin Turner said he'd like to see Russell Martin back because they needed to strengthen up the bullpen.
Yes, I totally agree with that.
And we had been saying that too. We need him there. People have been joking about that because he was one of the most effective relievers they had last season. But he's a great veteran presence. You could put him on the taxi squad as the third catcher, or you just, like I said, put him in on the bullpen and have him ready. So he could play that role, not be the taxi squad, actually be in the bullpen and be the bullpen catcher at the same time. So you could actually have another catcher. So you'd have four catchers.
Could work.
So you would, I think that we'll see. I know that there were people posting that the Giants should sign Barry Bonds so he could be their DH.
That too. I saw that too. We talked about Freddie Freeman. He's tested positive. So with what is that going to entail? There's 3 players. They're not at camp. They're not at their summer warm-up. But they said they didn't test positive, but maybe they're showing symptoms. So again, we know it's something to do with with COVID.
Well, Nick Markakis, who has opted out, said after talking to Freddie Freeman, that was a lot of his help make his mind up to opt out. Hearing what Freddie was going through, he doesn't want it, but he also doesn't want to take a chance on infecting his family with it. And these players and any of us, if we haven't had it, we can only know by the stories, but some people it doesn't affect that greatly. Other people, it's terrorizing.
Yeah. One thing that's interesting that I didn't even think about is we do have the one team, Toronto Blue Jays, in Canada. Right now, the border is closed between the United States and Canada. I think July 21st is when it could open, but it could still be closed. The Toronto Blue Jays had to get a waiver to be able to train in Canada. They originally were thinking they were going to be training in Florida, but then all of those spring training sites were shut down. So they did get a waiver, but they still don't know if there is a season, where are they going to play? They want to play at the Rogers Center, but they still have to get a waiver from the government to be able to travel back and forth, because otherwise they would, without a waiver, they would have to be in in quarantine for 14 days, which does not bode well if you're
that's not
trying to play games.
They might as well take them out of the mix, and that's a slippery slope, to use that overused cliche. Once a team is taken out of that for whatever reason, if they have to shut down a team because too many players there seems to be a trend, how does that all work? We don't know. The Major League Baseball is going to have to step in and make the decision, because I don't think any team is going to give up any of the money that they would be losing by not playing. And at that point, do you start taking out, okay, so Toronto's out, we need to take out one other team so that it stays even? Or do you just stop play altogether?
Yeah, how do you make those decisions? And Toronto, it's a government issue. And so that's even bigger.
I wonder, though, if they'll grant some sort of a waiver for them, because they're having hockey there in Canada. And I know everybody's coming in and they're all going to be bubbled up in 2 different locations. So that changes things because they can control it more. There's not a back and forth. But I wonder, why would you they could probably put greater restrictions on how they move, where they stay, what they do. They could probably create a bubble for the Blue Jays, as far as obviously when they come to the United States to play the teams here, they're going to play more. They're only going to play 30 games at home. They're going to have to play 30 games outside of it. So unless they play 30 games, and there's no time for 14-day quarantine.
No.
But they have a hotel connected to Rogers Center. They could create the bubble there for them to stay in and play their games when they leave, fully protected when they're there, and they're not out. When they come in, minimal contact with whoever on the airfield, get on the bus, go to Rogers Center, stay in the rooms at the Rogers Center. If you're giving every player their own suite, put in a bed, let them stay there. But like I said, put them in the hotel there. That way they're all right there in one place at one time when they're at home and they're not near anybody else.
I really think that the government will give them a waiver. There's probably more, I don't want to say pressure on the Blue Jays, but they probably are having to come up with this bubble and how it's going to work. Okay, we're going to let you travel to the United States, but you have to do ABC in order to make sure that everything is safe. And again, I guess too, with how the MLB, but the MLB should also be involved. It shouldn't just be on the Blue Jays.
I think they have to be, because if something happens and the Canadian government says, we don't like how this is being played out, they could shut it down from the Blue Jay side. Like, hey, nobody's coming in, because that's become more the thing. The borders are being locked down by other countries. It's not just the U.S. saying, no Canadians, you can't come in, or no Mexicans, you can't come in. It's those countries are saying, you know what, you guys have too much going on. We need to lock this down, especially for the East Coast teams who are rolling through. Not only are they going to Florida, which is one of the hotbeds right now, but New York, which has been a hotbed, and with so many people in such a small area, it could flame up again. So you have, those hotspot areas they're going to, but I figure they got to figure it out, because even in California, where it's a hotbed now as well, they're allowing this to go on. And things are more open, but even as they start to clamp down again, They're still saying, no, this is essential. They're working on trying to be on top of this. And I'm sure that the minute that something goes wrong and it doesn't seem like Major League Baseball has a handle on it, we'll see the government get involved, at least on a state. California won't have an issue shutting things down.
No.
As we get ready to jump into the deep end of the pool and be totally immersed by the wonder of baseball, we still have to consider the things that were problems before a pandemic hit and caused a whole nother set of problems. And that is getting people interested in baseball again, or even creating new fans of baseball. For those of us who signed on to this, who gave our souls to it early on in life, there's not a big deal. In fact, we're more upset about some of the changes that are coming that we believe are causing integrity issues for this game. Recently, the sports columnist for the LA Times, Helene Elliott, wrote an article June 30th. This article posted in the LA Times said Dodgers Angels ought to cultivate young fans by starting games earlier this season, making the games more accessible, especially since we can't go to the games, make them easier to watch. And before we get to this one paragraph that's towards the beginning, and we felt that this was a good paragraph to share, making the game, fans can get more involved, earlier start times, but I think even a bigger thing, no blackout.
Yes, no blackouts.
Near and dear to your angry baseball fan heart.
Yes, I'm going to go on a rant right now, but I won't.
Why, especially in this season when you want as many people watching as possible, especially with the advertising dollars and that, cut it out. There should be, so people can watch wherever they are. Because even if you subscribe to MLB TV, you can't watch your team on your mobile device unless you're out of state. If you're visiting North Carolina, you can then watch the Angels or the Dodgers, or in your case, the Diamondbacks but if you're in your market, you can't watch them. We need to get rid of that. We need to do those things. And when I read this, I knew this really kind of grabbed me, and I just felt the need to share.
Remind us why we fell in love with baseball. Show those who abandoned the game why it's worth coming back. That the strategy and drama and rhythms of summer can be hypnotic.
Create emotional connections that bring us closer, even though we have to be physically distant. While fans are banned from stadiums and players are forbidden to give one another high fives or walk off home run hugs, give us reasons to care. And that'll do it for this week's Sibling Rivalry Baseball podcast.
Remember, you can find us on our website, siblingrivalrybb.com, and on Facebook and Instagram at Sibling Rivalry BB.
We're also on Twitter at Sibling Rivalry BB without the A. Email us, show@siblingrivalrybb.com. We'd love to hear what you think, so subscribe and rate us wherever you listen to our podcast.
Join us next week as we look at the regular season schedule and some of the best 60-game starts.
Hey, look! There's Josh Fields in his swimsuit. He's ready to jump in a pool.
You're out!